in Barcelona at a place called Cosmo Caixa, which means Cosmos Home. I show a picture of it, but the information, the program is given at this website. So this presentation is on, it will be posted. I don't think it's there today, but it will be this evening anyway, whenever Brad gets a chance. And then you can go get the website there. You don't have to write it down now. Next slide. Just show a couple of pictures. This shows the building where it was held. It's actually quite modern building, and they have a planetarium and all sorts of fancy stuff. There are huge Foucault pendulum and different things. It was a very nice place to have the meeting. Next slide. This just shows the group photo, and above the E in ESOP is me, and above the S and the O is Hans Boda, who's the president of IOTA ES, and above the P and a little bit to the right is Carlos Schnabel, who is the local organizer for the conference. All of them great people. I won't try to say who the others were, but well, I point out one person, Claudio Costa, to my left in the orange shirt. Was the one who first downloaded the Evans occultation program to run on a PC. So the first PC predictions of lunar occultations were responsible by him. And it was a few years, about 10 years later, that occult had enough capability to supersede those predictions. Next slide. And several of us went up to the Fabro Observatory, which is in the hills just above the Cosmo Caixa. So this was a real interesting place. We had a great view looking over the city of Barcelona from there. If you ever get to Barcelona, try to make an effort to get to this observatory. Talk to the people. I can give you, Carlos Schnabel's email address, and I know a couple of other people in there too who could help. So next slide. This just shows after the meeting we went on a tour of the Pyrenees, an excursion. We actually ended up at Pic du Midi in France. And got to see that area. But there's another observatory in Spain on the south side of the Pyrenees, and they have I think it was a 50 centimeter telescope there, and they also have a Baker Nunn. They got a Baker Nunn camera that they were able to get from NASA, and that were used for the artificial satellites, and they've adopted to use it to take photographs for near-Earth asteroids. So there's Joan, and somewhere I'm I have the IOTA cap on in the back there near the middle. So next slide. The interesting thing in the foothills in this area, there was that's probably a mistake. Just go on to the next one. There's a city called Ager, A-G-E-R, that's in the foothills right at the base of the Pyrenees. And they have a park of observatories. They have about 70 observatories there, mostly in roll-off sheds that people have set up. They have a whole bunch of them from the Agrupación Astronómica de Sabadell, which is their main astronomy group in the Barcelona region. But they have another one with other amateur astronomy clubs called Aster from other parts of the country. So it was very interesting to see so many telescopes in one place. They were joking about having a Kaguya sweet spot go over those observatories. But anyway, this was the schedule. It's a little hard to read, but this was just the opening of the first page here, but I'll just quickly read what they happened at the conference. Next slide. First, An unfortunate thing happened. I was actually at the ESOP 31, which was held in Pescara, Italy, and I talked about that at the last meeting. And one of the people there who is quite active observer from Poland is Paweł Maxim, and so you know, he's done a lot of good work in Poland to organize the observers there. But he's very overweight, and so he realized this was a problem, and so he, earlier this year in February, he had an operation, a stomach reduction operation. And it looked like the operation was successful, but about a week later he became very ill and he had sepsis, and it killed him just a few days later. So we had this sort of sad moment of memory of him. Then he's only 33 years old. It wasn't, and he had young kids, you know, a couple of young kids, so it was really sad. And then this fellow, Jose Ortiz, gave a talk about stellar occultations by TNOs. They're a little more active with TNO occultations in Europe than we are. They have some bigger scopes that they can do them with. And a couple like Hans Bode and Wolfgang Beisker, they travel down to Namibia and get time on local telescopes, or they take C-14 to do some of these faint events, Pluto events and things. Then there was a talk by Pastos Christo from Armagh Observatory, the occultation of the bright star 40 Capricorni by Jupiter in 2009. And so he did an analysis of the observations of that event. It was one of the brighter stars to be occulted by Jupiter in many years. And interestingly, we had a few months after that event, there was an occultation of that same star by an asteroid across the southeastern U.S., and we tried to observe that, but we were clouded out.
Did he do the Jupiter event in video or with CCD?
The analysis that he did was of the CCD observations. There were people who got video, but he said it was too difficult to analyze. He needed stuff in FITS format, and then he had a way of analyzing it all. And of course, video is really too fast a rate. You had to integrate and everything. And I made a video recording of the event myself from Bermuda, but the signal-to-noise ratio was too poor. I mean, most of us were observing in a methane band. We got filters so we could observe in the methane band to cut down the light of Jupiter, and you know, that worked for doing that. But it was a difficult observation for me, but these other people got some very nice recordings with the other telescopes and with CCD systems. Then next, Costantino Sigismondi from Italy gave a presentation by Skype, which didn't work out very well at all. He was talking about the solar diameter, historical things about the solar diameter, trying to use observations from the Vatican Observatory, and just some visual things from the past. Let's see. I'll go. Yeah, there was a page 2, though. There was still some more on that at page 2 of the. Can we go back one? Okay. Oh, just I gave my talk. Okay, so go to the next page then. Right. So I gave this the talk I just gave. I gave there. Then Andrea Ruccici talked about observing occultations photoelectrically, and his presentation was so good. I have it, and I give some of them here. Then Marek Zawilski, another fellow from Poland, talked. He's done a lot of historical work with solar eclipses, and so he talked about that. And then Conrad Gould talked about how he calls early usage of astronomy's Swiss knife, referring to that occultations are like a Swiss knife, army knife, that they can do all sorts of things. And so he was talking about how they were trying to study the lunar atmosphere, with occultations and positions and everything else. So back in the 18th century. And John Manick then talked about total occultations, gave us a sort of European summary like David Harold did for the world. Then there was a double star that was observed during an asteroid occultation that was talked about by one of the Dutch observers. And then there was also another double star during an asteroid occultation that was observed right in Barcelona region. And finally, something about Cult Watcher, and then we had there was a public observation and demonstration thing. And then on Sunday, Alexander Pratt from UK talked about video recording and analyzing lunar occultations of double stars, so sort of similar to what Dave Harold talked about. He gave a very interesting presentation at the meeting a year ago because he did research and located the two occultation machines that the Royal Greenwich Observatory built. First in the 1930s, a wooden one, and then in 1946 or so, they built one out of metal. A model of the Earth that they use, and then they had a guide thing with lights that would simulate, an occultation going across the Earth's surface. And I use this to actually get the preliminary times, before the days when they had digital computers to calculate everything. You had to have a pretty good first guess to do all the logarithm work and all the hand calculations that they had to do to produce the almanac and the predictions. So, okay. Next slide. Okay, there's more information on double stars using CCD observations. Octavia 4 does some CCD work similar to. And then there was a talk about drift scan using the WindScan utility. Computing asteroidal occultations and eclipses using GIST techniques. And then I gave one on asteroidal occultations. Gerhard Dangle talked about characterization of the new camera, the Wattec 1910, whatever it is. I can't quite read it, but of course we had a similar talk here. And then Andrea Riccici talked about analysis of light curves with diffraction patterns. And then Rutten, another fellow from the Dutch observatory, says how he turned a miss into a positive, where he had a noisy recording that he couldn't find anything in, but then with increased techniques, they were able to find an event that correlated with another positive. So, and then finally another one on analyzing photometric light curves. Next slide. And the last, Wolfgang Beisker talked about on the search for an occultation camera. So he's talking about the latest. He built this IOTA camera that was a CCD camera, sort of specialized for TNO and planetary occultation type events, and some sort of an update on that. And then there was finally an invitation to go to the next ESOP meeting, which will be held at the end of August next year in Prague, the Czech Republic, or Czechia, whatever it is. So, and then after that there was the group trip, so that was the end of the meeting. So next slides, although I'll talk a little bit about double stars, I want to mainly show Andrea's things here. I'll just go quickly through here. Next slide. This was a meeting I gave I gave this at a double star conference in Maui, and it turns out next year there's going to be a double star conference in Barcelona. So I'm back here. The long history of double stars with lunar occultations. You know, the duplicity of Antares was discovered in 1819. Anyway, just go to the next slide, please. This just shows the Antares grays that was against a Kaguya profile. This was the one that we did in Western Australia in February 2009, showing that both components have been reduced and their separation and position angle taken into account to line everything up. Next slide. And then I talked about IOTA's history, how we set up a catalog of and tried to keep track of the visual timings, but there are too many dubious events got included, and these got folded in the professionals, the people doing double star work. So, oh, this is great, and they took all these things and they put it in the interferometric catalog. And so we have a lot of events that we're trying to remove now that got in here, but there are some codes in that we did here that indicated probable and possible events rather than certain. And I think all those probable and possible were, that data was lost when we went to the current prediction techniques with occult. And so those are all in there as possible occultation, doubles. I think they should still be flagged that way, but they should be removed from the interferometric catalog list. So I just haven't had time to figure out an automatic way to do that, but it's something that it's on my to-do list to clean that up. Next. Okay, this is just talking how we're trying, as Dave Harold said, over 90% of these events show no duplicity with the new video observations, and we're trying to get observers to record lunar occultations as total occultations at very different position angles. So we need people separated by hundreds of kilometers to do that. So if you only get one observer observing it, you just get a vector separation in the position angle, in the direction that the occultation occurred. Next slide. David Harold already talked about our publication then. This was the first report where we did all the past events. Next slide. This is from lunar occultations now, and this is one where a new double star was recorded during a graze that Dave Harold did, and you can see the first component disappeared, and then there was a brief occultation of both components, but then the other component popped out, and then along with both, and so forth. Next slide. Okay, it just shows a list of these events. Next slide. Of the discoveries that were made. And then talked about the professional work now being coordinated mostly by Andrea Riccici at the National Astronomical Research Institute of Thailand. But he comes from Italy, and he worked for a long time at the European Southern Observatory, where he's made connections and has gotten time on the VTA, the Large Telescope in Paranal, to record occultations of the galactic center region. It's done. So next slide. This just shows the VLT, and just showing the people who are currently doing photoelectric occultation work, or using CCD, fast CCD systems. And the only thing we should probably add, Bruce Holenstein here is our own effort trying to use these expensive cameras to accomplish the same thing. Next slide. But not as much has been done as in the 70s. We had a lot more people doing photoelectric work before video burst on the scene. And this just shows his observatory in Thailand, the 2.4 meter telescope. Next slide. And it's fairly recent. And it just shows the different photometers and photomultipliers, the different techniques of observing diffraction patterns. So that's what he's after. Of course, video, the cadence is a little too slow, as I said, for total occultations, but for grazes, we can resolve diffraction patterns. But this just shows a drift scan observation, of course, which is a little crude for this sort of thing. But next slide. But if you get high enough speed, though, you can do that. This just shows how they made lots of observations in this one year where the moon passed through the Milky Way region, and you can see all the blue stars in one night and the red dots on the next night. So over 200 events were recorded over the 2 half nights using an Isaac recorder with 3.2 milliseconds and the 32 by 32 raster recording. And 184 confirmed lunar occultations, 22 binaries were found, 5 triples, 2 angular diameters measured, and several extended or complex sources were found. Next slide. And this just shows an example of a binary star where there were, clear step events, but you can see how the diffraction patterns merge in. And these are done in the infrared, by the way, so you get much higher signal-to-noise ratio. The scintillation is much less than in the visual wavelengths. So you can see these very nice results. Brightness ratio is given. Next slide. And this shows an example of a triple star. It just shows the basic recording here, but another way you can do is take this recording and deconvolve it to determine the brightness distribution across when the star disappears. And you can see there were 2 bumps there, one before and one after, a little farther away and a little fainter. So this shows the separations of those events, just a few arc seconds, and shows the K magnitudes of the components. So quite interesting result. Next slide. And this shows an example of a circumstellar shell. It's a similar thing, but showing the 2 lobes of the shell with a radius of about 16 milliarc seconds. And all of these times here are all relative times. He doesn't have any way of getting absolute times with his recording system. He hasn't tried to solve that problem, and he doesn't care. He's just interested in the astrophysics. So in the Naval Observatory days, we wouldn't let the photoelectric observers do that. They say, as a condition of us supplying you predictions, you have to give us times. So, whatever way they could. So anyway, so next slide. I think we're nearly done. Okay, so I talked about double stars from asteroid occultations. That was about lunar events. Of course, the diffraction scale is much different, and you get much better resolution because of the larger distance of the asteroids. But they're farther from the ecliptic, so they call it different stars. But of course, individual opportunities are rare. Next slide. This just shows a light curve of an occultation of a 9th magnitude star by the asteroid Una that was recorded by Dennis DiCicco. And you can see a nice stair-step event here, a disappearance, and then the secondary remained visible, then the secondary, and then reappeared. So this was an ABBA sequence in David Harold's terminology. Next slide. And I'll try to show some videos of this. This shows the profile showing, Dennis DiCicco's chord was up here. I think this is up here with these 2 events. But this had an interesting shape model that was confirmed by the occultation observations. Next slide. Okay, for more information, you know, I give the websites and everything. And what I'd like to do now is, if out there on the web, if you could actually go to the main IOTA occultation site, www.occultations.org, and if we could navigate to that, we can get to the videos from there. I'll show what to do, but just go to that www.occultations.org.